A meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff has ended after 3 hours, with a Kremlin aide saying the two men had a very useful conversation where they exchanged signals on Ukraine. The meeting took place 2 days ahead of President Trump's deadline for Russia to make substantive moves towards ending the conflict or face more sanctions. Well, these images from earlier show Mr. Witkoff walking in the park near the Kremlin with Mr. Putin's envoy Kirill Dmitriev, his fifth visit to Russia this year. After talks with the US president on Tuesday, the Ukrainian president Volodymyr Zelensky welcomed the threat of tougher US sanctions on Moscow. And after a deadly strike close to the main Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant overnight, he's urged the US to increase pressure on the Kremlin. Well, let's speak now to Vitaly Shevchenko, Russia editor from BBC Monitoring. Vitaly, first of all, the two men, Steve Witkoff, President Putin, exchanged signals on Ukraine. What on earth might that mean?
We don't really know, Anita. We don't know if America's and Russia's positions are any closer. All we know really at this moment in time is that the Russians, they looked happy. They made happy noises after that meeting. Kirill Dmitriev, Russia's chief negotiator, said that dialogue will prevail. And Yuri Ushakov, who is President Putin's foreign policy advisor, and he was there at that meeting for almost, well, at least part of the meeting, maybe all of it. We don't know that. He said that it was a very useful and constructive conversation. And he said the thing that's stopping the Russians from saying more about what sort of signals the two men exchanged was that first, Steve Witkoff has to report back to Donald Trump about what he has discussed with Vladimir Putin. Then we will know more. But looking at Russian media coverage, they are slightly circumspect and restrained in their commentary. So it's a waiting game at the moment. Of course, Ukraine will be looking at signals coming from Moscow and Washington as well, particularly whether Donald Trump will make good on his promises of imposing further crippling sanctions on Russia and possibly Russia's trading partners. But so far, and I'm still speaking about signals, anything that we've seen the Russian army do in Ukraine and rhetoric coming out of Moscow, these signals do not suggest that Moscow is any closer to ending the war in Ukraine or even restraining its appetites in Ukraine. As you say, Russia carried out a missile strike on a riverside resort in Zaporizhzhia this morning. 4 guided missiles, glide bombs, killing 2 people, injuring at least a dozen more. So this isn't a welcome signal for Ukraine at all.
OK, Vitaly, thank you very much. Vitaly Shevchenko, Russia editor for BBC Monitoring. And as Vitaly was saying, so far we are only getting the readout from the Russian perspective. We haven't heard it from the US perspective yet, which of course is very significant. Well, Russia has more than doubled the number of drones and missiles launched against Ukrainian cities since President Trump's return to the presidency, a BBC Verify analysis shows. We're going to bring you that BBC Verify report later in the programme. But first, let's speak to Barry Donadio, who is a former member of the US Secret Service and elected Republican official. Barry, thank you very much for your time today. And it's the intensity of those attacks by Russia on Ukraine, including on civilian targets, that has really tested President Trump's patience with Moscow. So, as I mentioned, we only have the Russian side of this meeting so far. But do you think Steve Witkoff will have taken a harder line in this meeting than perhaps on previous occasions?
Thanks for having me. And I think Witkoff has the toughest job in Washington, D.C. right now. He has to go and tell Vladimir Putin something that he doesn't want to hear, that probably the United States is going to levy extreme sanctions against Russia if this war doesn't come to an end, or at least some steps to come to an end. So I have faith that he can do something, but this really rests on Vladimir Putin and their decision. And unfortunately, this is leaning much more towards the Russia actually probably made this decision long ago, even before they started to go all the way under any circumstance. And, we just might be trying to negotiate with a side that really doesn't have it in the cards to negotiate until they meet their full objectives.
Yeah, well, President Zelensky says the Kremlin will only approach serious peace talks if it begins to run out of money. So do you think President Trump will actually go through with these sanctions, or might he be minded to shift deadlines? He has done that, of course, before. Do you think he should stick to his deadline and introduce more sanctions, plus those secondary sanctions on countries that trade with Russia?
The Donald Trump I know is to be taken seriously. If he's saying he's going to do something, he sure is going to do it. Whether that's going to be an escalation between the United States and Russia is yet to be seen. But I would bet a paycheck on that. If President Trump says he's going to do this, he is certainly going to do it.
And do you think at the moment, if we look at sentiment in the Republican Party and in the MAGA movement, is that sentiment supportive of President Trump introducing these further sanctions?
Yes, absolutely. MAGA, the Republican Party, supports President Trump 100%. He's doing exactly what we elected him to do. He is getting results. We also have to remember he stopped 5 wars, so within 5 months. So he's trying to stop a 6th war. It's not easy. Like he said, this is a war that was started in another administration. He's trying to get it to come to an end.
This is the one that he said he would end almost immediately, isn't it? This particular war. Obviously, he has signed a deal with Ukraine on rare earth minerals and other natural resources. So do you think the pendulum is swinging towards Ukraine in Donald Trump's mind, or is he trying to reach a point where he has a deal, if you like, with both sides?
No, obviously, you called it just correctly. I think the pendulum is swinging towards Ukraine. We saw Donald Trump wholeheartedly try to do a peaceful negotiation, a neutral negotiation, without picking a side. No one in the world can say that he didn't try. And yes, it's proven to be a lot harder than he or any of us had expected. A lot of us were hopeful that he could end this rather quickly once he was elected. But again, if the other side, which is Putin, and we don't even blame Russia, we blame Putin. If Putin decided way before Trump even got elected, you're up against only one party that wants to negotiate, that's Ukraine. And Russia has no want whatsoever to negotiate. That's what we're left with. So we will see by the end of today when Witkoff talks to Vladimir Putin where we are. But I'm not very hopeful.
OK, Barry Donadio, thank you very much for your time. Good to get your analysis on this story today.
Thank you.